The tenant accused me. Mommy seldom had to repeat that I should listen to adults. I tried to please the elders so they would not scold me. One day, our tenant went to the market and bought 2 chickens. She placed them across from her home's entrance in a sort of box that had small openings. As always, cats and dogs ran around the small yard. Maybe one touched the opening to the box, so the chickens got out. The entrance to our apartment was on the other side of the building. I rarely used the back entrance. I did not even know that the lady had any chickens. One late afternoon, the tenant called me and said, "You played with my chickens as if they were balls." Mommy came out and said, "Do not worry, I will pay for the chickens." She said this even though we did not have much money, and she knew that I had been at school all day. My father had already been taken away to a forced labor camp. Mommy knew I would not touch someone else's property. My dear mother was worried that this tenant might go to the police and complain about me. Then who knew what would happen? They could put me in jail. The tenant made a lot of noise and screamed that she even had a witness who had seen me play with the chickens. I was so scared, trembling, ready to pass out. Then from nowhere, the 2 chickens returned. They went back into the box from which they had escaped earlier. The 3 of us stood there. This unreliable woman didn't say, "Sorry that I accused you." She was a Hungarian and we were Jews. Mommy said, "Thank goodness the chickens returned. Who cares about an apology? Our worries are over." This was our life under Hungarian rule. My dear daddy. My daddy was handsome, tall with black hair and black eyes. He loved me. Up to the age of 10, I was his only child, and I resembled his late mother. His mother had been pretty, with blue eyes, blonde hair, and a light complexion. At an early age, my daddy became an orphan. His father died in the First World War. Shortly after, his mother passed away. The 4 handsome children remained in the care of their late father's brother. But this uncle sent the 4 boys away, and he took over their parents' house. The young boys traveled away from their villages to find work. My daddy was 14 years old, the eldest of the orphans. The 4 boys learned tailoring, and their salary was their room and board. Eventually, 2 of Daddy's brothers escaped their misery. They left for South America and settled in Montevideo, Uruguay, to start a new life in a strange land. The 2 brothers began to work, and then they opened a dry cleaning store. My daddy's youngest brother soon followed the others to Uruguay. Now the 3 brothers were together, and Daddy was struggling in the old country. In Europe, there was recession and no work. Then catastrophe fell on the European Jews. My dear father was drafted into a forced labor camp in June 1942. His group marched on foot with no food, water, shoes, or warm clothes. One day, his keepers forced the group into a trailer, locked the doors, and poured gasoline around the trailer. Then the soldiers put a match to the gasoline and burned the workers alive. My 37-year-old father was among the group of young men who died that day. We forever miss my daddy, who, far from his family, suffered cold and hunger for months, and fire took my dear daddy's life. Miss, did a star fall on you? After the Hungarian takeover in September 1940, we Jews were deprived of citizens' rights. In 1944, the Hungarian government issued a decree that we Jews must wear a yellow Star of David. The local population now could recognize a fearful Jew from far away on the street. Locals called to us, "Dirty Jew, did a star fall on you?" They spit on Jews, and some Jews were beaten. That I was born a Jew was a daily shame. Former friends asked, "Miss, did a star fall on you?" even though I was the same Jewish child with whom they had grown up and played for many years on our street. From the front door of our home, we could see most of our street, which began at the city center. On the left side of the street, built on a hill, is the Catholic Church, which rises over the city. Its church bells rang day and night, 4 times per hour. It was so beautiful to hear. Each morning I looked at the church's clock tower so as not to be late for school, and I looked with worry down the street to see my former friends leave for their school. I no longer wished to encounter them. One of my former so-called friends became a street agitator. He threw stones, called names, and attacked elderly Jews. A few times he spat on me too. When I told my mother, she said, "You, darling, must learn not to complain." A question remains. Did the Jewish leaders know about the laws that were being made against Jews? With each new day, Jews had fewer and fewer rights. No one will know how much our leaders knew. No one ever will know how much our leaders knew. The knife with the mother of pearl handle. Sometime in the 1930s, an uncle from Santiago, Chile, one of my mother's brothers, came to visit his birthplace to see his mother, sister, brothers, and other relatives. He was a handsome bachelor who planned to get married. Many families wished that perhaps he would choose their daughter. Friends recommended many girls. Finally, one day he found his match. His fiancée was chic and pretty. Granny was happy. At the wedding, people danced on top of tables. The new couple sat me next to them and gave me 2 valuable presents: a 2-inch narrow knife with a mother-of-pearl handle and a gold ring. The small knife came in handy on field trips organized by my school. As the lives of Jews in Europe became harder, the pocket knife became useful and indispensable. Soon my life was changed forever. In early spring 1944, armed soldiers forced us out of our homes into the former brick factory outside of town. We now lived in this ghetto. Then on a sunny day, May 27, 1944, we were strip searched in a tent. I hid the small knife by squeezing it in my hand. We were forced into cattle cars without food or water. About 95 scared Jews, old men and women, young mothers with frightened, hungry children. We had almost no air to breathe. In a corner, my mother, brother, and I were sitting between one another's legs. Then I began to make an air hole with my secret knife in the cattle car wall. On the next day, early Sunday morning, the cattle cars pulled into our hometown, into Simlo-Sylvanais, for the last time. It was another sunny day. The Hungarians came to the train station to see the locked cattle cars carrying the unfortunate Jews. The smiles and laughter on their faces is imprinted in my memory. Late that night, our cattle cars left the city's station. I made the hole bigger in the cattle car wall so that my brother, mother, and I had some fresh air. We were so desperate. Adelbert, my 5-year-old brother, asked for water and food. Our mother held him tight. Mommy kissed him. She had no food or water to give to her son, but at least we had some air. A ghetto, a segregated, impoverished area of a city in which Jews were forced to live.